Most colleges and universities require incoming students to take the ACT, or American College Test. Your result will then be used to determine your eligibility for enrollment in the college, as well as your ability to test out of classes or even get financial aid such as scholarships. Because of these reasons, it's very important that your grade is as good of a representation as possible of your actual abilities. There are a few main problems that students encounter that will prevent them from doing well on the ACT. Number one is if you're not prepared. Number two is when you don't know what to expect. And number three is when you don't know how to pace yourself. So I'm going to give you 4 important steps that will help you do as well as you can when you take the ACT. The fourth most important is to be very careful with the score sheet. Every few questions, go back and check that you're filling out the right circles. Use a number 2 pencil, don't smudge it, and make sure that you have a good eraser. Bring 3 or 4 pencils in case one breaks. Now the third most important is to keep a clear mind. If your test is in the morning, eat breakfast, make sure you're at your very best. Don't second guess if you're unsure. Stick with your first answer and spend your time on the other more difficult questions. Also, make sure that you understand the questions that you're answering. Now number 2 is to use time efficiently. Recheck your work if you get done early, and go back to the longer difficult problems instead of trying to solve them first. Make sure to bring a clock or watch, something along with you so you'll be able to know the time, because when I took the ACT, the clock didn't work in the room where I was being tested. Now, if the problem is going to be a drain on your time, go ahead and guess at it. Unlike the SAT, you don't get penalized for guessing on the ACT. You only get points for ones you get right, nothing subtracted for getting ones wrong. So if time begins to run out, just put random answers on all the remaining questions so you might get a few extra points for them. Now what I found to be the most important step, number 1, when taking the ACT, is beforehand to take practice tests. This might mean buying a book or doing the online test prep that ACT provided themselves. Now I'm going to give you a few tips for each section. In the English section, remember it's not actually going to ask questions about sentence structure. It's not going to ask you what's a verb or a noun or an adjective. It's actually just going to have sentences laid out for you. And you're going to have to read through them and see which ones sound right and which ones sound wrong. It's going to build on what you've already learned in previous English or grammar classes. Now in the math section, as soon as you find an answer that is right, move on. They're multiple choice, and you're not going to want to have to spend time finding that all the other ones are wrong. There's only one correct answer. There's no degrees of how right something is. So if the right one is the first one, check it down and go to the next question. Now you will want to bring a calculator. Even though every single question can be solved without one, it's going to save you a lot of time. And if you do have to guess in the math section, make sure to eliminate all the wrong answers first, and then make an educated guess on what's left. In the reading section, just look for the main details. Don't focus on all the small points. The test is not necessarily on your reading ability, but on your ability to understand, remember, or find information later on in the passage. In the science section, again, the test isn't really on science. It's on logic and sometimes math. Most of the time, all the information being asked for is going to be in the reading passage. You're just going to have to know how to group and organize the information correctly and solve the problem. Now, a few last tips. You want to look at the answer choices first in a section you're really familiar with. This will prevent you from going on rabbit trails and let you find something that you're actually looking for. This is especially helpful in the math section. And you're unlikely to do better on the ACT than what you actually know. What we're trying to do by giving you tips and pointers is make sure that there's nothing keeping you back from doing as well on the ACT as you have the capability to do. Now, if you still don't do very well, you can always retake the test up to 12 times. My name is Joshua Lindsay. I'm at the end of my sophomore year at Masters Baptist College in Fargo, North Dakota.